I would like to open the session about power and culture, soft diplomacy, European and international relations studies. Before I present our first distinguished speaker, I'm happy to be surrounded. When I first looked at the combination of our panel, I feel very much I'm part of the group of Ben Gurion University of the Negev, so that it feels like cozy and warm. Oh yes, for sure, but not dry. And as the Spanish ambassador, or a lady from the Spanish embassy, just said to me, she apologized she couldn't join us, but she thought that our panel was the most interesting from the whole so. We would open the panel with Professor Sharon Pardo, and he will speak to us about Israeli celebrity diplomats' fame in contemporary Israeli-European affairs. No, a wonderful title. Sharon is a Jean Monnet Chair in European Studies in the Department of Politics and Government at Ben Gurion University, Senior Researcher at the Simone Weil Research Center for Contemporary European Studies, and he is the co-editor of Europe and the World Book Series by Lexington Books. He served as the chairperson at the Department of Politics and Government between the years 2016 and 2018, and is currently serving as a senior adjunct fellow at the National Center for Research on Europe, University of Canberra, New Zealand, a member of the board of the Israel Council on Foreign Relations of the Israeli Association of International Studies. His research interests focus on the legal and political dimensions of European Union foreign and security policy. And if I continue, we will have to use the whole time of the panel, so I give the floor to you, Sharon.
Well, thank you very much, Rachel, and thank you very much for the kind introduction. I always tend to say that since my matter is not in the room, there's no real need for the kind introduction, but I appreciate it. For some centuries, celebrities are associated with the modern world of diplomacy. It is widely agreed, for example, that Benjamin Franklin was America's first international celebrity. His groundbreaking discoveries in the science of electricity in the late 1740s and in the early 1750s catapulted him from obscure scientific amateur to status of probably the most famous American in the world. Franklin's fame thrust him onto an international stage and made possible his pivotal role in the American Revolution. Now, over the years, some surprising celebrities represented their countries as ambassadors. Among them, we can mention some writers and entertainers, such as the actress Shirley Temple, who was the US ambassador to Ghana and to Czechoslovakia, and also the chief of protocol of the US Department of State, Nobel Prize-winning Chilean poet, diplomat, and politician Pablo Neruda, who was the ambassador of France, and Nobel Prize-winning Mexican poet, diplomat Octavio Paz, who was the ambassador to India. Now, you'll be surprised that in the late 20th century and the early 21st century, celebrity diplomats such as Angelina Jolie, she was the special envoy of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. Well, you see them all in that list. All these celebrities are performing a different type of diplomacy, which needs some clarification and also some deep theoretical framework. These celebrities, such as the guys that you see there, perform their diplomatic roles in a completely different way than other traditional diplomats. These celebrities are a public phenomenon with no academic or practical training in the field of diplomacy, who are defined by the international activism and populism in a complete opposite to traditional diplomats who act mainly in secrecy and behind closed doors. These celebrity diplomats are active on social media as well as old media and mass performances via stage events. My research, which I must admit is in its very early stages, aims at understanding Israeli celebrity diplomats and fame in contemporary EU-Israeli relations. Now, one key question that we should all ask ourselves is whether these celebrities are indeed involved in a global diplomacy. After all, most of their activities are not associated with traditional diplomacy. They do not speak for a constituency, and almost none of them is a member of a formalized guild of diplomats. The evolution of diplomacy make it clear, however, that what the objects of diplomacy, of diplomatic activity were, and who the likely diplomats would have been, is subject, of course, to constant change. Richard Langenhorn argued already in 1997 that we are all basically diplomats. He explained that the loss of primary control by states and their foreign ministries, a pattern which first became visible after the First World War, is part of a process which has produced a balancing increase in the activities of state representatives who are not members of the foreign services. So we can argue that diplomacy is wedded to everyday activity along wide continuum and open-ended version of individual agency. If we agree to that, then clearly the normative claims of traditional state-centric diplomacy are obviously eroded. Furthermore, I argue that some celebrities deserve to be diplomats on their own merit. As Andrew Cooper explains, celebrity diplomats do fit into some of the generic components of diplomatic culture. They combine the assertive individualism characteristic of the West with an appreciation of universal or cosmopolitan values. They detest the use of violence. They engage in continuous dialogue with multilateral fora. They are eager to balance what can be considered megaphone diplomacy with face-to-face engagement with official actors up to the level of presidents and obviously prime ministers. The activities of celebrity diplomats in the international arena also highlight the adaptive quality of diplomacy. The political elites use celebrities to boost their own credibility. The role taken by celebrities tells us a lot about the rigidity of the modern Westphalian model. Currently, a large number of celebrities are active on the global stage, promoting global equality, global equity, and global governance. Many of them are fighting poverty, women's rights, children's rights, and focusing on health issues in different parts of the world. Now, Israeli transgender singer Dana International, winner of the 1998 Eurovision Song Contest, is obviously at the heart of my research project because of her blend of both representative and unique qualities. Dana International revolutionized Israeli, European, and global popular culture, becoming a landmark global cultural icon and an Israeli celebrity diplomat, both in Europe and around the world. Dana International is much more than a successful pop singer. She is a pioneer of today's blossoming Tel Avivian gay scene, a strong representative of equality, a television and a social media star, and most importantly for this research, an ambassador for the kind that the Israeli government wants to show to Europe and to the rest of the world, the accepting, colorful, and open-minded country. Like many celebrity diplomats, Dana's role transcends the boundaries of easy categorization. Dana International stands out as the archetypal celebrity diplomat who bridges the gap between pop culture and the traditional diplomacy of modern Westphalian-centric model. In light of Dana's major contribution, the promoting of LGBTQ rights in Israel, in Europe, and all over the world, Israel's traditional diplomacy, led by the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, adopted a strategy aimed at promoting gay Israel as part of its campaigns to counter the negative stereotypes that many Europeans have of Israel. One might even call it what I term as the Danaization of Israeli diplomacy in Europe and elsewhere. Now, she's not alone. Getting the attention of elite decision makers is a salient playing in Wonder Woman movie produced for the mass audience for Israeli actress Gal Gadot. Gadot, who has embraced her Israeli heritage, has become an international celebrity, a source of pride for Israelis since the release of the box office smash Wonder Woman. Now, Gadot acts as an Israeli ambassador mainly in the US, but just in May 2019, she appeared at the Eurovision final, hosted in Tel Aviv, promoting Tel Aviv, as well as Israeli values, culture, society, and also Israeli cuisine, which we will discuss later on. Other Israeli celebrity diplomats that I discuss actually in my research are Omri Kaspi, the basketball player, the singer Ahinoam Nini, supermodel Bar Rafaeli, and some Israeli chefs and Israeli singers. Obviously, there is a need for a clear distinction between celebrity diplomats and celebrities who have taken up political careers. One crucial factor is the distinction between official and unofficial roles. We all know this guy. Once the celebrity runs for elected office, a line is crossed. This is clearly the case with the Ukrainian actor Vladimir Zelensky, who's serving nowadays as the 6th president of Ukraine. But this phenomenon is global. The classic celebrity diplomats, among them are the actors, the supermodels, and the singers, must be distinguished from the state officials and career diplomats who are accorded with celebrity status. Here we should think, for example, of former US President Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter, former US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, former Finnish President Martti Ahtisaari, former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, and former leader of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev. These former political leaders have pursued what Andrew Cooper calls diplomatic afterlives. These enormously popular celebrities increasingly try to make a difference on a global stage by capitalizing on their freelance celebrity status, while at the same time building on their attributes and established connections. Another important distinction should be made between celebrity diplomacy and other categories of advocacy via opinion leadership and charity work. George Clooney is clearly an example of another big supporter of liberal causes and charities, and actress Gal Gadot, yet another classic celebrity and opinion shaper whose work increasingly intrudes on the public global arena. She has 2.2 million followers on Twitter, over 10 million followers on Facebook, and almost 31 million followers on Instagram. Gadot is extremely active on issues of women empowerment and feminism and remains heavily weighted toward public dimensions of self-improvement. To retain their celebrity diplomat status, these celebrities must possess communication skills, a sense of a mission, and some global reach, while at the same time they must enter into the official diplomatic world and operate through the matrix of complex relationships with state officials. There's a clear advantage in linking individual star power to a collective project. Celebrities enjoy the spatial power to frame issues in such a manner that attracts the visibility and unique channels of communications. They can reach out to an audience which does not listen to state institutions, but responds to people. Another important question is why celebrities have moved into the diplomatic world. The answer, of course, has to do with the fact that celebrity culture is the age in which we are all living in. Now, unlike the traditional diplomats who are hooked to official negotiations and protocol, celebrities are committed, or rather connected immediately with a large range of audiences, social media, and of course, the traditional media outlets, which provide celebrities a multitude of connections to a global audience, and I'm just about to finish. The constant attacks on traditional diplomacy helps celebrity diplomats. For so many years, traditional diplomacy is being blamed that it has lost its relevance, that it is an elitist means of communication, that it is full of deceit, and that there is a constant question in the air asking who are diplomats now. So Cooper explains to us that celebrities can pick and choose their tactics between the standard top-down repertoire favored by state officials, including personal and or shuttle diplomacy, and a bottom-up approach. And for him, celebrities can act as creative hybrids, copying practices from other arenas while putting their own spin and media-savvy knowledge into the mix. When it comes to Israeli-EU relations, since Israel and the EU established relations in 1958, the relationship has consisted of a number of conflicting trends that have resulted in the emergence of a highly problematic and volatile relationship, one which is characterized by a strong and an ever-increasing network of economic, cultural, personal ties, yet marked at the political level by disappointment, bitterness, and anger. And here, I will just conclude with the following. I think that in the 21st century, diplomacy puts emphasis on a dialogue with diverse audiences through different channels. Given the trends and the historical tensions between Israelis and Europeans, Israeli celebrities such as Dana International, Achinoam Nini, Gal Gadot, and others offer exactly that. An open and a direct dialogue with Europeans and others on a people-to-people level. Because of their ability to act as a magnet for attention, Israeli celebrity diplomats conduct a dialogue that confronts such difficult issues as the overarching question of what values Europeans and Israelis truly share. Therefore, I'm of the opinion that we must not dismiss this phenomenon of celebrity diplomats in EU-Israel relations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sharon. Did you put it all out?
Oh, sorry. Just.
All right, Sharon, thank you so much. It was more like a teaser because I have millions of questions. But will I suggest that we keep our questions to the end, that we hear 4 presentations one after the other, write down our questions, and then the questions will have to defeat lunch or not. I would like to present the next speaker, Dr. Hila Zahavi. Also, I will not say anymore Ben-Gurion University because you understand we are in the family of Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. Hila is the director of the Simon Weil Research Center Contemporary European Studies at this university. And she leads the European Commission-funded Near EU Jean Monnet Research Network. She also serves as a member of the core committee of Cost Action. I will skip the long name. Recently, she co-edited a special issue of the European Journal of Higher Education titled 20 Years of the Bologna Process, and a new book which she co-edited on the Jewish contribution to European integration was published a few days ago. Wonderful, congratulations. And Hila will speak to us about education diplomacy and cultural diplomacy. Perspective, the rest you can read yourself. Hila.
I guess this is needed. Hello, my name is Hila. Thank you, Rachel, for your presentation. Is it good? Can you hear me? Thank you. So, today I'm going to present my paper on education diplomacy as cultural diplomacy, perspectives on defining knowledge diplomacy. So it's mostly a theoretical work, but it's also combined with work on the education diplomacy of the EU and the Erasmus program. So the objectives is to examine the links between education diplomacy and cultural diplomacy, to redefine education diplomacy, and I will try to link it with the current discussion on knowledge diplomacy these days. So I chose the case of Erasmus Plus program, students mobility, but not only, also other programs under Erasmus Plus as the case study. I had interviews with participants and also questionnaires, so it's a mixed method, also quantitative and qualitative, and also I had interviews with policymakers. So the context, when we talk about education diplomacy, is talking about the EU's afterness and talking about public diplomacy and talking about education diplomacy as part of public diplomacy as a method of enhancing afterness and the visibility of the afterness of the EU. Okay, and so the external education program of the EU is just a study case, and we're talking more broadly about education diplomacy as a case of public diplomacy and all cultural diplomacy. So why talking about education diplomacy in the beginning? Why should we bother? So if you look on the Global Europe strategy, you will see that it's one of the main topics being raised under public diplomacy. The first example that pops up is education diplomacy, educational means. However, the existing literature have limited perspectives on education diplomacy. It is usually focused on education rather than higher education, academic aspects and knowledge diplomacy, and it's mostly focused around the global diplomacy perspective and not how countries, how states can use, or state-like actors can use this tool. There is a limited discussion about it by Hartman and others. However, it is very much focused on education as a tool of public diplomacy and not so much on education diplomacy as. So when we talk about public diplomacy, I came with the definition, not me specifically, but with the help of others who wrote a lot about it. The development of continuous relationship between the actor, the state, and specific individuals in key positions through cultural events, media channels, and academic and professional ties. So the theoretical context of this is the discussion around new public diplomacy since the beginning of the 2000s, mostly by Gilboa and Melanson, discussing who are the actors. Are we talking only solely about the state as an actor? What are the tools, talking about new digital tools and other tools to be used? And who is the audience? Are we talking about the elite or the wider audience? And so when I read this kind of theoretical discussions, I cannot avoid myself from thinking about soft power and how it is related to soft power, how public diplomacy is a method of bringing up and enhancing soft power, and also soft power as a justification for using tools of public diplomacy. Of course, others have written about this before, about this link in the paper, that I will not get into that. You can certainly ask questions about. I also take it into the normative discussion, the normative power discussion, and how norms also play a role on this discussion. And when I tried to redefine the concept of education diplomacy as a case of public diplomacy, I could not ignore the aspects of culture and how culture is also part of the discussion. And I'm talking about the definition of cultural diplomacy as a development of continuous direct and indirect relationship between the actor, the state, and the foreign public through media, arts, culture as a tool to create cooperation and understanding. So this aspect of mutual dialogue, of overcoming the national interests, is also very prominent, and also the tool of culture. So the study case, as I mentioned, is the Erasmus Plus program, which is totally related to Europe, of course, to the EU. I will not go into what the Erasmus Plus program is. I'm sure that you all know a lot about it. So when we look about the study case, we can think about different aspects of this study case. The audience, as opposed to to cultural diplomacy and new public diplomacy, the culture is not the wide public. The audience is not the wide public. The audience is the future elite of the targeted country, the targeted state. The students are from the beginning not the wide public. The students, the academics from the beginning are the elite group. However, it is even more emphasized since there is an assumption in research that the students will be in the future elite of the country. So we cannot talk about audience as the wide public. No, the audience is the elite or the future elite, and this is not according to the new public diplomacy theories, not according to cultural diplomacy. The main methods are the unofficial channels of communication, the socialization and diffusion of norms. And of course, this is all very much detached from the formal diplomatic ties. So these three aspects are very much according to the way that new public diplomacy works. And of course, these are ongoing relations. All those programs, Erasmus alumni programs, they are very active. It's part of the method that they're working through. So it's an ongoing relation. It's not a one-time event. So according to this, I want to suggest a definition for education diplomacy based on public diplomacy, based on cultural diplomacy. The development of continuous relationship between the actor, the state, and local higher education institutions or specific individuals, like students or faculty, in key positions through academic and educational ties in a way that enables representation of plurality of positions and opinions beyond the official state. So I want to come up with this suggested definition behind those two others. So what are the main differences? As I said before, the audience. The audience is the main difference between cultural diplomacy, new public diplomacy, and education diplomacy, as I try to define it. Although there are some interesting coherences, such as the recipient, the foreign public directly, without any state mediation, the fact that these are independent agents, like in cultural diplomacy, the agents themselves are independent from the state. There's a dialogue, not only a monologue. The state is not the only actor, and the EU is the greatest example. It's not solely the nation state that can act on this arena. It's also open to other forms of actors, such as the EU. And of course, the socialization and diffusion of norms as a key aspect. It is important for the actors, cultural norms in the process. This is a very important aspect of the process. So now I want to take a step back. When I go to different conferences, I always find myself in a discussion about knowledge diplomacy. I always find myself in a panel on knowledge diplomacy. But I find it a little bit weird because these are all the kind of diplomacy, methods of diplomacy that are sometimes related in the discussion of knowledge diplomacy. So science diplomacy, science in diplomacy, diplomacy for science, science task forces, diplomacy by scientists, science for diplomacy, and of course international projects for capacity building in academia, and education diplomacy is only one of them. And I want to challenge this assumption that this is all part of the same way of diplomacy or form of diplomacy, since of course we are in all those examples we're talking about the same actors. These are all the same actors: the academia, the universities, the students, the faculty. However, the means are very different from one to another, and the theoretical definitions should be therefore different. So I call here to deconstruction and a new definition for knowledge diplomacy to enhance this tool further. Thank you.
Wow, a champion of time keeping, so thank you so much. You helped everybody here. And after mingling with the celebrities and being educated in different levels, now we come to the culinary stage. We will get an appetizer, I'm sure, from Ido Rosenblum, who is a PhD student, guess at what university? The Negev one. And he's a researcher at the Simon Weil Center, where Hila is the chairperson. His PhD research focuses on the connection between gastronomy, identity, immigration, international relations, and public and cultural diplomacy. Please explain. He is a co-initiator of the Cultural Diplomacy Forum and a project manager at the Simon Weil Center. Ido, the floor is yours.
Hello everybody, so I'm Ido Rosenblum, not the famous one from the taxi. Probably everybody thought he will be here today. I'm a PhD student in Ben Gurion. As we all know, this is a Ben Gurion panel, and I will present today my research. So the research that I will present today deals with the role of the EU-Israeli relations on the decision of how to brand Israeli-owned restaurants in the EU, European Union space, with a focus on London and Berlin, which I will not discuss today, but this is my case study. My study focus is on the Israeli immigrating chefs to the EU through the theories of gastro-diplomacy on one hand and national cuisine and immigrant cuisine on the other. Since those theories are quite under-researched, they will not stand alone. My research is based on the theories of soft power, public and cultural diplomacy, nation branding, and the IR perspective, and lifestyle migration, global middle-class migration, and diaspora diplomacy on the immigration perspective, and last but not least, on the historical context of EU-Israel relations, Israeli relation with its diaspora, not the Jewish, the Israeli diaspora, and the history of Israeli cuisine. So in the last few years, we are witnessing a growing phenomenon of Israeli-owned restaurants on Western countries, such as United States of America, Canada, Australia, and across of the EU, of course. Those restaurants were established mostly by Israeli skilled chefs and food and beverage experts. Those restaurants considered to be very hip nowadays in cities such as New York, Philadelphia, Sydney, Paris, Amsterdam, and of course Berlin and London. And I can go on with Bordeaux, Lisbon, etc. China, of course, yeah. Their chefs and owners win prizes and receives a vast recognition on the gastronomic world and the public sphere as well. With this success, there is a question that I think that should be asked. Even though those restaurants are quite successful, and although most of those chefs in the European Union doesn't hide the fact that they are Israelis, the vast majority of them aren't using the term Israeli cuisine to describe their restaurants and their food. They prefer to call it Middle Eastern, Mediterranean, Levantine, or even Palestinian or Arabic influenced cuisine. This is quite different and unexpected behavior comparing to other professionals in this field. My hypothesis is that the EU soft power attracts the Israeli immigrant chefs to live across the EU major cities with the presence of Israeli immigrant chefs at the European space, and the Europeans, through the normative power of Europe, shape the discourse of what Israeli cuisine and its legitimacy, using that to shape the perception of what is Israeliness, Israel, and its borders, if there is such a thing. All of that through the European perspective of what is right, what is wrong, and what is, of course, normal. The EU-Israeli relations are much complicated and conflictual since the War of '67, but mostly since the Venice Declaration of 1980, when the EU officially recognized the Palestinians' right for independence. Even though the EU is the largest trade partner of Israel, and even though there is a great cooperation between two parties, not just on the economical aspect, at the center of the relations stands a tension of the solution, the potential solution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As Gordon and Pardo claimed, both publics have an influence. Publics have an influence on the representatives' actions on the field of international relations. Gordon and Pardo called it the power of the local, and in my research I will focus on the European locals. The EU, as we all know, is a global actor that mostly recognizes a soft or normative power. And since we are all, or most of us, European studies researchers, or our expertise are on those fields, I will not elaborate on it today, but on my research you will find it, of course. During my research, I will use the public diplomacy theory as a theory that goes hand in hand with soft power theory, as Ila claimed before. Kuhl claimed that an attractive appeal of political leaders or of the diplomatic representatives to the public of another nation may cause within the public an attraction and a will to listen, engage, and to cooperate. To be more precise, new models of diplomacy, such as public diplomacy, allows to the actor and its agents to connect and to shape its image within foreign publics, while they skip the need of all diplomatic methods and the need of foreign representatives and officials as mediator. The field of cultural diplomacy discusses more deeply the instrumental role of culture in diplomacy and the role of cultural figures as agents of cultural diplomacy. Both in public and the cultural diplomacy stands the mutuality of the relations that distinguish it from the process of propaganda. Both of those diplomatic theories also emphasize the role of non-officials on building and maintaining the diplomatic relation. In my research, I want to examine the public and cultural diplomacy through both actors and the agents, the immigrant chefs, which are the agents that stands in between. First, the Israeli aim to attract European public sphere to its side in the conflict while using food and other cultural tools. On the other side, you can see the European ability to attract parts of the Israeli society, even to immigrate to the EU, thanks to the perception of what is the EU and what it represents, and what are the benefits from living there. And last but not least, the Israeli immigrants that stands in between. During my research, I will try to understand if through the process of immigration they became Israeli agents or EU agents, and who they present, and if they are so presenting some of the sides. Another pillar of my research is the cuisines. Cuisines are mostly recognized by their national origin and roots. From French, Italian, Spanish, and Greek to Japanese, Chinese, Thai, and Indian. Cuisine is well defined as a tool for a nation building, a tool to create a national identity. Even though it's a young state, Israel is not much different on that context. Since the beginning of the Zionist movement in Eretz Israel, a great effort was made to create a connection between the people to the land. As a state of immigrants, Israel also adopted over the years those ethnic cuisines. Finally, the process of swallowing the other, the Palestinian is, in that case, also earned a central part of the Israeli cuisine. As I see it, the fact that Israel is a young and diverse country that still lives in a conflict and haven't defined its borders yet reflects also on its cuisine. And vis-a-vis, the cuisine reflects on all this, the anxieties of Israel. The national aspect of the cuisine plays a major role also through migration flows and diasporas. Cooking is one of the most prevalent professions that immigrants adopt when they immigrate. When it comes to immigrants that eat lunches restaurants, we can observe how in the most of these cases they are importing their homeland national cuisine to the hosting society. I have a short experiment that I will skip now because I don't have much time, but if you will think about it, when you go around in major city in Europe, the restaurant that you will see probably will be affiliated to one or another nation. The Israeli immigrant chefs that I'm focusing on are much different from the most of the common immigrant restaurant cases. I'm focusing on professional chefs or food beverage experts that the decision to open a restaurant abroad stands on the center of the decision to immigrate. Most of them are educated on their field with experience on the cuisine area. Due to the fact, I've decided to describe them as lifestyle immigrants or a global middle class immigrants. People in more stable situation in life that, thanks to the opportunities that globalization brought, looking for a new challenge or a new experience. It also might be a temporary location before the next move. This is an important definition to make because with the better socioeconomic status comes a greater ability to influence. Here I would like to open brackets to mention... I will conclude, okay, so I won't open the brackets today. Okay, so 2 minutes? Okay, yeah, okay. I will skip it. The gastrodiplomacy on my case study seems to be different from the one I've described on the former slide, which shows that gastrodiplomacy is a tool for mutuality. And I want to call it gastrodiplomacy feedback in this case. Instead of the representation of Israeli cuisine by Israeli immigrant chefs, as happens in other immigrant cuisines or happens in official Israeli diplomatic events, we're witnessing a lexical transformation, something on the EU-Israeli relations, spectrum changes the way the same food is called in Israel and other places such as the United States of America, for example, same food, different name. I will skip the last things that I want to say, but just a short example to finish. The book on the left side is published in European publication named after Tel Aviv, and on the right side, the publication from chefs from Philadelphia, Michael Solomonov in the US. So one focus on Israel, one focus on Tel Aviv, and other ways to call the Israeli food. So thank you, and sorry for taking your time. Yeah.
So thank you so much. It's always a good advice to leave the audience a bit hungry. You know, so yes, exactly. So we continue with Tal Hadassi Lipa from the same university. He will talk to us about Europe Day, a view from outside. Tal is also a PhD candidate at Ben-Gurion University, political science. His research focuses on the public celebrations of Europe Day in Georgia and Ukraine as part of a wider discussion on the soft power of the European Union in third countries. Tal also worked at the Simon Weil Research Center for Contemporary European Studies at Ben-Gurion University.
Thank you. See if this one is needed. Maybe.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much. As this is a research in progress, final conclusion has not been drawn yet, but some initial findings will be presented here. So maybe it will give you some incentives to come to the conference next year and maybe hear the full finish of the research. And just some basic assumptions to start, because Europe Day celebration is not a well-known phenomenon outside the EU, maybe inside the EU as well, and definitely not in Israel. So, as you probably understood, Europe Day is an under-researched political symbol. It was, if we are assuming that the EU is facilitating its political interest through cultural means, Europe Day can be a potential agent of such a process. And because Europe Day is an official symbol of the EU since 2004, it means, I don't think this is working that way. It is? Yes. Okay. So as this is an official symbol of the EU since 2004, it is counterintuitive to think that not EU countries will adopt it as their own. If we think of a political entity such as a state or a country or whatever, if we create or facilitate our own political symbols, we do not think that other political actors in the international sphere will adopt those political symbols as their own. We can't believe or we can think that other countries will celebrate our Israeli Independence Day in the public events. And if we think about that way, we won't think that other countries outside the EU will publicly celebrate Europe Day as a day of their own. And the basic assumption of my research is if we are analyzing this political symbol, it is being used outside its potential political borders, that can help us reveal some power relations between the countries that is the facilitator, the initial facilitator of this political symbol, and the country that adopts this political symbol as their own. Just to put it into my empirical studies, my empirical study now. So two main countries that I've researched so far, Georgia and Ukraine, both publicly celebrates Europe Day in a large-scale event. You will see some photos afterwards. And Georgia since 2014, Ukraine since 2003. Both of those countries are not part of the European Union and are not planned to be part of the European Union in any kind of European enlargement future plans. So how is it distributed throughout the country? Maybe you would think, oh, it's maybe just a centralized location, only in the capital, only with political figures, but not. Both countries celebrate it on a very large nation-scale event with several different locations throughout the country. In Georgia, in the past only in Tbilisi, but in the last couple of years throughout the country. And in Ukraine, it's even bigger. Each municipality is responsible for its own event. So you can see local communities, like I saw a football club in the outer skirt of Kiev that organized one of those events for the local community in the village. Who pays for the event? Again, you might think, oh, the Europeans are paying for it, so why not a free event? It's kind of the case in Georgia. Funds are divided between the country, between taxpayers' money and European funds. But in Ukraine, it's completely on the local taxpayer to fund those events. And you can see some very large-scale, hundreds of thousands of euros for one event. Number of participants, again, you can maybe think, it's a small event, 2,000 people, 3,000 people, but no, in Georgia, a country of 4 million, 50,000 participants nationwide. In Ukraine, you can see hundreds of thousands because every municipality is celebrating this event. Official recognition, not one in Ukraine, Georgia yet, but I think it will be soon. And it's official holiday in Ukraine. So the Europe Day is an official recognized holiday by the state of Ukraine. And the nature of the event is completely similar. Some differences, and I will go to them later. Political speeches and recreational events, festivals, music, food, and so on. So now that we understand the events, let's go and conclude that this is an interesting phenomenon, I think, in my perspective. So this is a worthy case study. So what is going on here in a nutshell? So as you can see we have an official, a local symbol, political symbol inside the EU, which is being exported to another country. And this exportation of a symbol is by both a soft power mechanism and a public diplomacy practice. We can see that public diplomacy and soft power was discussed a lot here, so I won't go down into this. But this is not the only thing that happens in the incoming and receiving country. This is not being facilitated as the poet attended in the first place. It goes through a cultural filter and it changes its original intention into the local recipient. And as a spoiler alert, the narrative that those countries process and produce afterwards is the narrative that we are Europeans. We are celebrating this event because we are part of the European nation, not the EU as a political entity, but Europe as a social, political, economical, cultural construction. And this is not where it ends. This is also feedbacking back to the EU as part of promoting local political interest. We want to join the EU, we want to join NATO, and so on. So we can publicly show how we are adopting EU cultural events. And also locally, this is not only an international study, but also local. This is formatting a new or justifying new collective memory and all the theoretical conceptualization is written over here. So we talked a lot about what is public diplomacy, but there are three main understandings on how public diplomacy is used and how can we understand power through public diplomacy. So the most simple one is, as we talked a lot about it, is a tool to get others to want what you want. This is how everyone, or this is the wider understanding of public diplomacy. And we can see it. So this is a political symbol that's been transferred to another countries to promote European interest in third countries, and we could elaborate on further. Another deeper understanding of public diplomacy is a narrative. Public diplomacy is a narrative, is a tool for us to communicate. Political actors should shape and being shaped by public diplomacy. It's not just a one-sided transformation of norms and ideas and interests, but it's feedbacking into the actor that send them, and again, facilitate down, as we saw from the earlier slide. And the most, I think, this is what I'm using in my research, the most complex understanding of a public diplomacy, which is, public diplomacy is a discourse. It's a whole range of tools and language and signs and images, and this is a way to construct political meaning. So this is the way of political symbol being moved across the nations is a way for both local, for both sender and recipient to construct political meaning onto language, signs, images, and so on. So as I talked to before, we can see that we have some strategic narratives understanding of what is Europe Day, because if there weren't, we will suspect to see identical events throughout every country, but this is not the case. There is a very completely different event in Georgia, a completely different event in Ukraine. I have time to elaborate? How much?
3 minutes.
So I won't elaborate, just read it in my research if you want. But the events are completely different. More of a narrative of come and meet our European brothers. You can see it in the Georgian case. And this is a more historical justification of the Ukrainian one, branded as a part of Ukrainian princesses that used to rule different kinds of ancient Europe. I won't go down into this, you just need to trust me. Yeah, so again, this is a cultural adaptation of the same political symbol. So again, as I saw, we are trying to justify a narrative. They are both trying to say we are Europeans by facilitating this kind of event. And this is not just the only way, this is the only part of the political calendar where those countries are trying to say we are Europeans. In Georgia, this is a well-known quote by the Georgian former Prime Minister, I am Georgian, therefore I am European. He mentioned it in a speech in front of the Council of Europe in 1999. Again, in Ukraine, we can see a legal facilitation of this narrative. Part of the Ukrainian law is we are aspiring to be part of the European community and the European Union, and governments should always try to achieve this integration to integrational goals. So again, other questions that we can come up here is who is practicing power? If again local politicians are using this symbol of this event to facilitate their own interests, so is it a European tool? Is it something that the European is exporting, or is it something that's being manipulated on a local level? 2 minutes. Not an answered question yet, but maybe it will be when this research will continue. And some other aspect of this that we can understand political impact by diving really, really deep into a very singular political phenomenon, not going really wide. We can see political impact. We can see how both countries are using those cultural and more soft events to promote realistic and security goals. We can see those are the artists that were invited in both events, also in Ukraine and Georgia. Both of them from conflict zones that are between the country and Russia. So in the Georgian case, we can see it was the voice winner. She was originally from Abkhazia, an occupied territory by Russia. And in Ukraine, it's the same, but the Eurovision representative, again, she was eventually, Ukraine didn't participate in Eurovision because of the singer who was in a scandal between Russia and Ukraine. So again, I won't go down into this, but it's two different levels of analysis. Is it a top-down approach or is it a bottom-up approach? I'm using practically both in this research, but I won't go down into this in this talk. But this is our, to conclude everything, I think this research allows us to think differently about how power is being facilitated in international relations and between the EU and other third countries. If this is the original understanding of this is the original understanding of power, and actor A is influencing actor B in order to change actor B's behavior in the international sphere. This is not the case here. So actor A is trying to influence actor B, but actor B is using the same methods of influence in order to influence actor B in return and also influence downwards into the local level. That's it. Further conclusion will come when this research will end. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure it's not only for me, but for everybody present in this room, the term diplomacy is now much wider, much more varied and interesting. So at 12:15 we are invited for lunch, so let's use the minutes left for some questions or comments, all very, very short. And I'll use my privilege as a moderator just to give a short question to Sharon, in fact, to everybody, but specifically to Sharon. Sharon, you explained the very interesting advantages, in fact, or positive points, possible positive points, aspects of celebrities as diplomats. Can you say a few words about the problems that might come with it? For instance, I can think about that they are not accountable to anything. So if they choose to go against their own country, saying things in the world, or this kind of things, how to think about that. And otherwise, please, there are other questions, comments, short, please.
Yes,
Yes, go ahead.
only if the students have said their statement. First, I very much enjoyed the students' presentations, very enlightening. Perfect timing for the food. May I suggest the importance and power of the concept of positive deviance, promoting the values that we all seem to embrace, democracy, human rights, respect for life, and so on and so forth. The concept of positive deviance has now revolutionized the training and teaching of those of us working in public health who spend most of our life looking for the bad guys. Positive deviance means looking for the good guys, who are the heroes who are doing the right thing. And I'll give you, if I may suggest, I'll give you the most spectacular example of positive deviance of the 19th century. How many of you have heard of William Wilberforce? How many of you have heard of Abraham Lincoln?
I'm sorry, sir, we have only a couple of minutes. Can you come to the
Very
question?
briefly, William Wilberforce, how many of you know that William Wilberforce led the campaign, a successful campaign to eliminate slavery in the entire British Empire? Positive deviance.
Thank you so much. Other, please?
I was just going to ask to Sharon, to what extent do you think Donald... Nicole, sorry. So you were talking about like celebrities in politics, and the first thing that comes to mind, the first person that comes to mind is Donald Trump, and we were talking about the celebrities having followers and how that has an effect. And I mean, like a lot of the youth that voted for him is because he had this like popular following and was a celebrity before the president. So do you consider his like his presidential position to be because of his celebrity background? Like, to what extent do you think that has an effect?
Okay, Sean, will you use a few minutes? We have to.
Well, I'll be very, very quick, because in a way, Nicole, thank you very much for your question. You actually answered Rachel's question. Yeah, Donald Trump is clearly a celebrity president. Not yet afterlives, as I term them. But yeah, I mean, here you go, and you have an answer for your question. I mean, what are the issues that might be with these kind of celebrity diplomats? Clearly, he's not a typical president. Definitely not a typical US president. But above all, to your question, Rachel, I think just because they are not accountable, that is exactly why they can conduct a dialogue on a people-to-people, a more successful dialogue on a people-to-people level. And we see it definitely with Dana International and with Gal Gadot. The fact that she has 44 million followers, the fact that she can speak to larger audiences than any other country, and the fact that she's not accountable to any of the official lines actually make it a far more deeper dialogue than any diplomat. Now, Nicole, I agree. I mean, he's clearly a celebrity diplomat, and here you have the pros and I would say the cons of a celebrity diplomat that became a president. Zelensky, by the way, is another interesting example, and also Boris Johnson, to some extent, is another celebrity diplomat of almost the same time. Thank you.
I have a remarkable question to you, Sharon. Noticing the examples that you brought up of the celebrity diplomats, there's a distinct difference between the Israeli examples you brought and the international ones you brought, mainly Americans. The Americans are either appointed diplomats, like Shirley Temple, or devoted diplomats, like George Clooney and Angelina Jolie. The Israeli diplomats are called adopted diplomats. They are adopted by the country's diplomacy, like the official diplomacy, but I mean, they were not drafted into anything, and they didn't agree to do it. It's all upon them. Is there a reason for this difference between the two cultures?
There was one more before you answer? There's one more comment or question? Yes? Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Arad. Well, you know, this is exactly the issue. First of all, there are major differences within the Israeli Diplomatic Guild that does not welcome them officially into the club, except probably for Bar Rafaeli, who is an exception because she was officially appointed by the Ministry of Tourism as an Israeli ambassador to advocate the
previous coalition.
Previous, I guess. But you're absolutely right. This is a completely different league. I call them celebs that actually cross the lines in the American case. In the Israeli case, obviously, many of these celebs are actually working, as Rachel said, in a way against the official line of Israel. We all remember once the moment that Dana International won Eurovision. It was, I think, Shas that actually claimed that this is a shame for Israel, etc. And Achinoam Nini is another example with Mira Awad, etc. Yes, they are working in a way against the official line of the state of Israel, and it's a completely different style of celebrity diplomacy than the one that we see in the US. However, this is the kind of dialogue that really works. I mean, we see that there are clear results when it comes to people like Dana International and Gadot. Yotam Ottolenghi, of course.
May I add to both of you that actually that's part of the whole idea of cultural diplomacy, that the agents are independent, that they have their own channels, that they have their own messages, which is not always aligned with the country's official state. That's the idea.
They are always independent?
Is it right to call it diplomacy then?
Yeah.
Is it the right definition?
We call them diplomats on their own.
Yeah.
Okay. Last, introduce yourself.
Well, this is exactly what I asked. I teach public diplomacy in the college, and I am a scholar, but it always bothers me. What is the analytical added value of deconstructing those kinds of diplomacy? What makes, I don't know, this kind of practice, diplomacy, vis-a-vis other social interactions that always happen and have with the political discourse, etc. How can we distinguish between different kinds of social interactions, and what makes certain social interactions diplomacy? Okay, so
can you answer this huge question in half a minute because we are late for lunch?
I would say that currently this concept that most of those interactions can be adapted by the state and be enhanced into diplomatic sphere. So when you talk about digital age diplomacy and those, that's exactly what you said, that the state can adopt and enhance these situations for its own benefit and make it truly diplomacy.
So let's leave it by that.
Social interaction make it diplomacy, not the political discourse, the results of the interaction.
I suggest we continue this interesting discussion over lunch. Thank everybody, all the participants, and in particular